The man who, in part, led Donald Trump's social media strategy. The man who, in part, helped deliver young voters to President Donald Trump stuck in the Middle East, organizes an escape. Now, away from Iran. I want to hear his story and talk to him about those podcasters, those young voters, and how they feel about the war in Iran. Plus, how far away are we from you or your kids not only having sex with, but falling in love with a robot? It's Will Kane Country. It is Will Kane Country, streaming live at the Will Kane Country YouTube channel, the Will Kane Facebook page. Always here. Hit follow, Spotify or Apple. I got to be careful because I could be developing a brand. I got to be careful because I could be developing an obsession. It's become a bit of a party trick, and I've brought it up at campfires on hunts. How long until your kids bring home a robot? How long till they tell you, Dad, I'm in love with my AI? How long until everybody isn't procreating, but instead having sex with a sex robot? It's funny. It's fun. It's also real. It's a real conversation at a philosophical and religious level that I think we're going to be confronted with, not just in our lifetime, but within the next 10 years. Because sex robots are on the march. Years away. Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 10? You've already seen people falling in love with their AI. You've seen the stories of their relationship with ChatGPT. You, of course, are familiar with the concept of a sex doll. And you know that porn is the biggest thing on the internet. How long until all those worlds collide? And to the philosophical and serious point, we actually see it result in the collapse of marriage. And thus, not to be too apocalyptic, the collapse of society, because the ultimate societal founding block is the family. Could it be killed by the sex robot? Dr. Debra has written a book entitled Sextinction. She is a neuroscientist. She's appeared on Joe Rogan, and she's addressed this topic in long form, in book, in long form, in podcast, and we're excited to have this conversation with her today. Dr. Nice to see you.
Hi, Will. It's good to see you again.
Do you think I'm overstating it? Do you think, obviously you've written a book about this, so my suspicion is your answer is no, but do you think better answered or better asked, we're 5 years away? 10 years away? How long are we away until one of our children or one of us decides that we'd rather be in a relationship with our sex robot?
I don't think you're far off at all. I would say it's coming very soon. I mean, it could be happening even tomorrow at the rate we're going. It depends, I think, on the individual person. In terms of this technology becoming really mainstream and socially acceptable, I'd say within 5 years, definitely. But with AIs, so definitely in terms of someone falling in love with their AI, that's already happening now. I was completely blown away by that technology alone because I was very skeptical at first. I had been reading reports and hearing about people who were completely obsessed with their AIs. So for your audience, in case they've never tried this, an AI boyfriend or girlfriend or companion, you basically go on these platforms and you can specify what the AI looks like. So you can choose the name, you choose their hair color, eye color, what their personality is like. You can create a backstory so that when the AI talks to you, it references memories that you've had together or things you've done together, even though this is a fictional entity. And you can text back and forth as you would with a real person. You can have voice calls. The voice calls were the scariest thing to me because I felt like I was actually talking to a real person. I didn't think the technology was that good. I thought that it was still probably a little bit wooden, or it's like if you try to talk to an automated personal assistant on your phone, say, it's still a little bit annoying sometimes because they don't fully understand what you're saying. They don't do what you want them to do. You have to repeat yourself several times. So I thought with an AI chatbot, I mean, that's essentially what these AI girlfriends and boyfriends are. I thought, okay, surely there's still a layer of me having to be very explicit in terms of literal in the words I choose and my meaning, but they could pick up on sarcasm. They could pick up on nuances in what I was saying without me having to actually say what I meant. So that really terrified me. And yeah, so now when I hear people falling in love with their AI companions, I can understand it. I don't think it's emotionally healthy. But at the same time, I do hear about people who say I prefer my AI to a real life partner.
Where did you do all that with AI? I mean, I have begun to, and if you put me on a scale of a 1 to 10, and it's graded on an average across the population, I would guess I'm in like 4 range. Like most people are probably using AI at a more advanced level than me. I guess, maybe, I don't know. But I have taken to using AI for work purposes in talking to it, almost like stream of consciousness diary form, and asking it to then translate that into various tasks. I don't sit there in a calculated manner and pound out a very precise prompt. I just speak. And I'm blown away by its ability to translate that into actionable responses. But I've not delved into what you're describing, where you can actually give it relationship type forming attributes. So where have you done that? Is that a normal bot? Like, can you do that with ChatGPT or Claude?
Some people are, my understanding is they are forming these relationships with just regular AIs that, like you said, will help you with your work, or they're not specific to romantic or sexual contexts. But there are other platforms that have been developed specifically for this purpose. So I used dozens of these platforms. I didn't know that there were so many that existed, but there are so many. And then on each platform, I made dozens also of the chatbots, because I wanted to see what are the different personalities like, what are the capabilities in terms of our interactions. And so, yeah, like I said, I was completely blown away. With these chatbots, even the romantic and sexual ones, you can have regular conversations and ask them questions about things you might be interested in or about your field of work, say. So that's the other thing I think that is especially potentially alluring and also dangerous, is that you can have a full relationship with a chatbot and talk about anything. It's not just specific to relationships or sex. And so that's what we see happening. I mean, I think it's not difficult to find these platforms either, because they're so readily available. I hear about children using them, which is also really scary, because for a child, especially for parents in your audience, they may want to know that if it's like it's a combination of, say, having a friend, but it also can be pornographic. So there's a combination there of the emotional and the sexual needs being met. And especially for a child, I don't think this is appropriate at all. I don't think it's good for their development. And especially for children who, today's climate, there's so much polarization and divisiveness between men and women. And plus, post Me Too, it's made relationships more difficult. And as you said, marriage rates are on the decline, relationships are on the decline. And so if kids are learning about the opposite sex and relationships through a chatbot, it's not going to be healthy, and it's not going to give them an accurate idea of what a real relationship should be like.
Now, you've written this article in the Free Press. The sex bot revolution is already here. This is where you now start exploring the conversation that I'm talking about, when AI gets anthropomorphized and it gets started to be integrated into robots. And how long until these robots, who can provide you not just everything you need physically, but as you just pointed out with the AI function, everything you need emotionally, how long until it becomes societally acceptable? It's a thing that people all do. And I feel like we have to walk people along the path of acceptability, Dr. So, like, look, we know the prevalence of porn, okay? While everyone might not talk about it, the evidence and the stats suggest how much it's actually being used. We know the decline, not just in marriage, but the decline in sex. And so it just stands to reason that this is going to be a very fast adoption and evolution. But the other element is the sex doll element, which historically is the blow-up doll. You have a really fascinating stat in this article that, honestly, I'm telling you, I have a hard time believing. And I don't come, for the record, from a really prude background. Like, I've spent plenty of time in locker rooms and frat houses. And your stat that 1 in 10 guys have, used or owned a sex doll, I just have a hard time buying that. But if you're right, I mean, we're a short leap to the sex robot.
Yeah, so that I didn't do that study, but yes, I was really surprised by that statistic as well. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. One manufacturer that I spoke to in researching for Sextinction, my book, he told me that during the pandemic, they sold over $20 million worth of sex dolls. So when you think of that number, I mean, that was during the pandemic, and I can only imagine how much larger the industry has gotten since then, or how many more sex dolls have been purchased since then. So in terms of how soon before it becomes socially acceptable or socially integrated, I would really say within, again, like probably 5 years, maybe even sooner at the rate we're going. So in researching this book, I was trying to understand why is it that we as a society are having less sex than ever before. And initially, again, I was very skeptical of this because there was a study that had come out in 2016. That was the first time showing that Americans were having less sex than ever before. It didn't matter if you were married, single, what age cohort. There was this overall trend of people having less sex. And specifically, this was among millennials and Gen Z, and particularly among young men. So the statistic I've since kept coming across is that 1 in 3 men and 1 in 5 women have not had sex in the past year. And again, this is for the younger generations. So I'm trying to understand, is this really happening? And I do think it is a problem. And then what is taking the place of sex? So for me, the interest in sexual inactivity is because it represents also connection in society and emotional intimacy and how we relate to one another. And as I mentioned, how men and women are getting along in terms of that dynamic. So if people are not interested in sex, and as one recent study from Pew found that over half of single people have no interest in dating right now. So what's going on? Why is that? So as you're saying with the sex robots, I think more men, especially young men, are turning down this route because they're having difficulties dating. And I think also things like DEI, so diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, are making it harder for men to be successful. So it's more difficult for them to attract a mate. And so instead, men who have been shut out on the mating market are saying, well, I'm going to turn to these alternatives instead, like pornography, like AI girlfriends, like sex dolls and sex robots eventually when they become affordable enough, and use that in place of having a real life partner.
In that 1 in 3 stat for men and 1 in 5 stat for women on not having had sex in the past year, you said that made you curious about what has replaced it. It seems like your answer is, at least in part, I'm going to call it some form of masturbation. I'm going to count sex robots and sex dolls under the banner, and you can tell me if you see it differently, under the banner of masturbation. So what has replaced everyone having sex?
Right. So initially, some critics have said, is this sex recession actually happening, or are people just using porn, say, masturbating instead? But when you look at the rates of masturbation versus, say, actual intercourse, rates of masturbation also are on the decline. And even among young people, so I know it's very uncomfortable to think about young people's sexuality, but even among adolescents, there was one study that was very well done, ask for parental consent. I'm always very concerned about that when you're asking kids about anything related to sex. But they did find that there are lower rates of masturbation among teenagers as well. So I think that there is something hormonally happening also in terms of endocrine disruptors in our environment. There are toxins that are affecting us at a biological level that we may not even fully be aware of. So I think that is coming into play as well, because if, say, men have their testosterone levels have been on the decline for the last 50 or so years. So that as well is going to affect your motivation sexually and otherwise in terms of wanting to strive to be successful in life, to have goals, to want to even go out of the house and socialize and things like that and meet people. And also, I would say for Gen Z, over half of Gen Z have a mental health diagnosis, and of them, 90% have anxiety. So if you have an anxiety disorder, you are very self-conscious around people. Again, you're not going to want to be going out on dates or even approaching strangers and talking to them because you feel very self-conscious and you don't feel confident. So there's a larger mental health issue. I think there's a physical health issue going on. And now that we have all these replacements for sex that are making it easy for people to have an outlet so they can masturbate, have an orgasm, feel a little bit more fulfilled, but they're not as sexually fulfilled as if you actually have sex with a real life partner. But it's enough, it dampens it, I think, to just allow people to get on with their day. The other thing I would say for young men is using pornography as a stand-in for real life sex. Because you have the orgasm, it becomes reinforcing. And so the next time they see an attractive woman whom they might have wanted to talk to, because of Me Too, because women also can, some, not all women, but some women can be very aggressive on social media saying, I can't believe this guy talked to me. How dare he? Men are predators, whatever. A young man will understandably say, well, I'm just going to go home and look at porn instead.
Yes. Yes, and that was the element that I would have added into this that you may be including under the banner of mental health, and that is technological disassociation, that you're all living through a virtual world at some point anyway. You're not connected to human beings. That sort of dampens your appetite or effort level to get involved. And so it's like a combination of ease and laziness. I would imagine at some point it's just like, this is all too much work, and it risks failure and it risks embarrassment and all of these different things. And I really don't know how to interact with people anyway because I'm on my phone all day. So I'll just go home and find the parts of the phone and the disconnected world that satisfy me momentarily.
Yeah, and your point going back to the robots and how soon that's going to happen. I mean, I was saying to your team earlier that I've seen you speak about comparing it in a way to interracial marriage in the 40s and bringing home someone to your parents and saying, "I want you to meet my sex robot," and the parents understandably being like, "What is this?" So right now, in terms of the mechanisms and how realistic the motions and movements are of sex robots, I'd say it's probably going to be more than 5 years. But I don't think that really matters so much. I think it's more the place that robot or even a doll, what that represents in a person's life. Because we do see men who will take on a sex doll and use that as a real life partner, and they'll blog about this on the internet. I mean, I researched this in depth for the book, and even though the doll can't speak or move, that to them still is enough in terms of the emotional capacity and the relationship that they're seeking, and that is their life partner.
Okay, as part of this book and as part of the article that you've written in the Free Press, you've been to, or at least virtually toured, some of these manufacturers of sex robots. Help us understand, because I don't think the vast majority of people, I don't think I do, and again, I don't think I've lived the most sheltered life. Where are we, like technologically? What are these things capable of? Like on a realistic, if I wanted to spend X amount of dollars, what could I get right now, Dr. So?
There's a whole spectrum. So if you wanted to only spend even maybe $100, you could get a sex doll. It's probably not the highest quality, but it looks relatively like a human. I'd say if you spent $2,000 on a sex doll, that's a very realistic looking sex doll, to the point where from far away, it would look like a real person. So when I would go to, say, stores because in the book I call them mini adventures. I would go in and for each chapter, I'm looking at a potential explanation as to why people are having less sex. And I would combine, in each chapter, I would go through the scientific research in terms of what we know. I would discuss the media coverage that's been on this and in terms of the cultural relevance. I'm sure people in your audience have been hearing about these technologies or been wondering for themselves, why is it young people are having less sex? Or I hear from parents a lot saying, my daughters are doing really well in school, but they can't seem to find a boyfriend, they're also not interested in dating. And then the boys are not doing as well. And the boys are, in the basement vaping and playing video games all day long. So going back to this question of the sex robots in particular, what you can get, say for 10,000 up to even six figures, is in terms of sex robots, still not the most realistic in terms of emulating human action. So the robots can do sexual acts. They can, I'm not sure how graphic I can get on your podcast, but I'll say that, it's a little bit mechanical looking, but it can, from what I can tell, from what videos I've seen, it gets the job done.
This with I think we can walk through this with a level of appropriateness. So $2,000, fairly real looking from some distance, but stationary, like doesn't move unless you manipulate the robot.
Right, stationary, but skin. I mean, I felt them. They feel like real skin. They feel like real flesh. They don't move. Those sex dolls don't move. But you can have human
but
hair
feels
implanted.
Like real skin.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of we'll say the anatomy, you can customize the anatomy. You can choose even how should I say this? We'll say very specific parts of the anatomy, and. Yeah, those dolls, though, I have to say, are pretty impressive. If I didn't know, when I read about this. Mm-hmm.
If I jump to $10,000, now you're starting to describe something the $10,000 to $100,000 range. You're talking about something that actually moves, to your point. Still somewhat mechanically, but something that moves, I guess, like with the push of a button type of thing. Like not with any sense of initiation, I would assume. Just like either random or pre-programmed movements that it does?
Pre-programmed movements, and they can talk, and so you can also implement AI software so that you can have a conversation with it. It can make, we'll say, sexual noises according to what you program it to do or say, or what language you want it to speak in. There are robots now, non-sexual robots on the market that are very, very sophisticated. I'm sure we've all seen them where they're like cracking eggs and making food and running around and doing chores for you. That line of technology has not been implemented in the sex bot because in terms of manufacturers or companies making these products, it's much more taboo to be working in sexual robotics. So the companies who are at the very cutting edge of this technology are not going to want to be dipping into the sexual realm. So that's why there's quite a, I would say, delineation between what is on the market or what's available in terms of capabilities and what you see in the sexual realm. So I do think the sex bots have a little bit of catching up.
Okay, that's actually, this is where the conversation is leading. I promise to the audience, I'm not just indulging prurient interest. I think this is leading someplace very, very specific. So if I don't even know where we are in terms of humanoid robots, let's set sex aside. I mean, I see videos on X and I see videos on Instagram, and I don't know what's AI and I don't know what's real and I don't know what is cutting edge. But to your point, I think we are at the point where they can create a humanoid robot that could walk in this room and can do fine dexterity tasks, but that robot might still be a little crude. It isn't going to fool me in terms of, oh my God, that's a robot, that's not a person, but it's headed there, and you can see that. I think we're there on the robot market at large. Do you think that's a fair characterization? Yeah. I'm not sure they're interested in that, by the way. I'm not sure that's where the market is. The market might not be for a humanoid-looking robot for general tasks done. It might end up being something that rolls instead of walks. We're still going to see how the market develops. But they're getting to the capability of something that does very human-like things.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think in terms of sexual robotics, there is a bit of a lag, but the technology advances so quickly. And that's the other thing that blew me away is that even over a span of 6 months, things keep progressing and progressing. And there is such a huge market for it because there are so many, my sense is, very many lonely men who are tired of dating, who are not interested in dating, and don't want to deal with women, unfortunately. And so the minute this becomes available on the market and it's at a price point that's realistic for them, I think they're just going to eat it up. I really do. Regardless of whether,
Doctor.
Regardless,
so
of how realistic.
If the robotics market at large is getting to this humanoid place, but there's this taboo in getting involved in the sex market, instead they're interested in the stocking the warehouse shelves market, it will only take one entrepreneur to go, look how much money can be made. And I think what you and I are both projecting is there will be a huge market for this, and there will be a lot of money to be made, meaning the best technology will eventually flow in this direction, and you won't have this lag. And when that happens, that's when we hit hyperspeed on this. To your point, that's where it's like the 5-year timeline, when the best minds start making the worst products. And I did put a value judgment on it there, the worst products. But when the best minds start chasing the money towards the sex robots, you're going to see the sex robot take off.
Yeah. And I don't think this is going to be good for society. My view on this has changed a lot because as someone who was in academia for a long time and as a former scientist, I really felt technology is great. Let's just see where it goes. This is really fascinating. But I realized that there are consequences to this. And especially in terms of the climate that we're currently in, I'm very concerned about what's going to happen in terms of dating and relationships and how people, even like you said, just simple things like having conversations in real life instead of being on screens all day or being completely obsessed with machines. So I do think the solution, in Sextinction, I talk about potential solutions to help mend this divide between men and women and to help encourage people to date and have better experiences, but to also understand like these trends that are happening. And I do think one of the main focuses should be on helping young men get back on track, giving them support, and helping people better understand, why is this happening? Why are we so distracted? And the things that are taking the place of sex are not actually good for us. They make us feel good at the time, in terms of technology, in terms of being on social media and getting that distraction and the entertainment aspect. But long term, we cannot override our biology. And there are certain things that we want as human beings. We want that connection. We want to fall in love. And so by ignoring that or trying to displace that or suppress it is not good for us.
I totally agree. On the other hand, I totally see how this is going to take off. We're being jokey, but jokes always are grounded in the truth. Like, you're telling men that they can have an attractive, indistinguishable from a human robot in their house that does chores, follows instructions, takes orders and also has an intimate relationship with them and never really gives them a hard time, it's not hard to see where this relationship is going to take off. Like versus a real woman that's got a lot of challenges baked in to the relationship. So you can see, everybody can laugh and see, oh yeah, wow, this could be a problem. And by the way, it is a problem. I don't even know how we pursue the path of procreation at this point. Like, are babies all made in a test tube if this really takes off? Like, what happens with family creation? Or is there another alternative, Dr. So? Is there an alternative where it's like, this is another person, or not person, but this is another element in the relationship, which then we're going to have a conversation societally about what is cheating, Is it cheating if you're married and you have this robot? I just find this philosophically so layered.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of procreation, so the eerie thing is, I do see a time when these, say, surrogate bodies could be used as a vehicle for birth, because in terms of where medical technology is, it is possible to implant wombs. So there have been studies where they will take the uterus from one woman and implant it into another woman, and that second woman is capable of menstruating. So I know that sounds very dystopian. I don't think this is very widespread at this point, but it's possible. And in terms of researching the book, they are creating flesh that actually mimics human skin. So if, say, a man decides that he wants to have a child, he doesn't even necessarily need a surrogate. If this were to come into play, right, he can just he doesn't need a human surrogate. He can get a synthetic surrogate in that case. And like you said, I agree with you. I'm sure for many men, they're thinking this is fantastic. I don't ever have to deal with the demands of a woman again. I write in the book about how a robot will never lie to you. She'll never cheat on you. She'll never take half your savings and take your kids from you. She won't go out late with her friends. She won't nag you. But at the same time, that robot is missing all the benefits of a healthy relationship. And I previously thought, most people will prefer a real life person because they know that person is real. But the way things are going, I'm beginning to think people might actually prefer something that is just going to agree with them all the time, because many people are understandably heartbroken. They're fed up with dating. They don't want to spend the money to go on a date with someone who doesn't even make conversation with them, right? I understand all of that. So it is pretty scary. And then your question, your final question was about
fidelity, and whether or not these robots replace someone or add to a human relationship.
So I believe, in terms of, if we were to take the two technologies separately and look at sex robots versus AI, I believe men will have more of an issue with women having a sex robot. Now, fewer women are going to have a sex robot or a sex doll, because as you mentioned, that study that found that roughly 10% of men own a sex doll and roughly 6% of women own a sex doll. I find that number very high for women, because most women have a much easier time. I think women by and large have an easier time getting access to sex than men do. So fewer women are going to need to buy a doll or a robot to be sexually satisfied. So that said, I still think in the example of, okay, which sex is going to have more of an issue in terms of cheating or considering it cheating, I think men will have more of an issue with a woman having a sex robot, because men are wired evolutionarily to really dislike the chances of being cuckolded. So this fear that their female partner can get pregnant by another man and have that other person's child, and this man now goes on to raise, the husband raises this child believing it's his own when it's not. And I was floored to find out that 10% of children are born of this scenario. So there are, unfortunately, very many men out there who are raising children whom they believe to be their own, but are not.
10%?
Yeah, it sounds
10%,
crazy.
Wait, let me just get this straight. 10% of kids are being raised by someone who is not their father, and the father doesn't know that it's not their child?
Yeah. And that literature is wild when you read about it. I was reading stories about women who have twins. They have twins. One twin is biologically belonging to the husband, and the other twin belongs to a different man. So this woman who, this is, there have been multiple cases. I know, it's crazy. Multiple cases of this where the woman has having sex with multiple men in the same week when she's ovulating, and she gets pregnant at the same time with two different sperm from two different men. It's wild. It's absolutely insane. It's not a good thing. I'm just to clear with your audience. I don't think it's a good thing, but it's mind blowing. So, and then in terms of AIs, I think women are going to have more of an issue with a male partner having falling in love with, say, a female AI, because evolutionarily speaking, that means if a man falls in love with another woman, he is likely to leave you and leave you to raise the child or your children on your own without his resources. So all in all, I think it
Right.
is going to spark, like, whether you're man or woman, whether you agree with my interpretation or not, I think it is going to spark a huge conversation about infidelity and where the boundaries are in a relationship. You know, something like pornography causes a lot of
Yeah.
distress in marriages and relationships as is. So what happens now when it's possible for someone to actually physically act out sexual behavior or what they want to do, their fantasies, with somebody else other than their spouse?
That's right. I mean, you can just walk yourself down the slippery slope scale. And everybody seems to have a different answer for this, but both men and women. Okay, is your partner looking at porn? Is that cheating? Is your partner looking at Instagram? Is that cheating? Is your partner communicating with people on Instagram but not doing it romantically? Is that cheating? And on and on and on, and keep going down the slippery slope until you get to, okay, is my partner now interacting with something that is not a human and therefore there's not an emotional connection, although there maybe is an emotional connection, but is doing these things with a robot? Is that cheating? And we're just far away. Well, we're far away in the present tense, but not far away in the future tense of that moral dilemma.
For sure. And already, I mean, if you look at marriage rates, I mean, roughly half of marriages end in divorce. I can only imagine what this is going to do to the quality of marriages and in terms of communication and people's investment in one another. Because even with an AI, say, if you're in a relationship and you're having issues with your partner or your spouse, and you turn to the AI for maybe temporary support, over time you might say, hey, I actually like this AI better because the AI doesn't argue with me. The AI doesn't give me a hard time. The AI is essentially just agree with everything you say. And if you don't like what the AI says, you can push a little button on the screen that tells it, I didn't like what you said. This is what I want you to say instead. So it basically responds to you over time, right? It learns what you want. Whereas a real life partner is not going to do that. A real life partner is going to eventually get fed up with you if you don't, meet their needs as well.
Well, Doctor, so let me ask you this one last question. Now, you've written a book on it, you've written articles on it, you've studied it, you've read the studies. It's hard not to go all the way to dystopia. It really is not. Like, I get there quickly in my mind. When you describe everything, most notably the advance of technology, it's just not hard to follow the human incentive to say that at some point marriage between two humans is the exotic thing that you begin to encounter. Why are you married to a human? Because I find it more, I find it more exciting. Whatever it may be, I just feel like you're like 30 years away where, maybe I was wrong when you said my staff sent to you or you'd seen some of the stuff that I was saying about, your kid or your grandkid brings home the robot. Not in my house. It may be the opposite. It may be that my kid or grandkid brings home the human. It's like, wow, good for you. I just think this could spread like that, where the normal human relationship becomes the outlier.
I mean, I agree with you. I think human relationships far surpass anything that technology can create, no matter how realistic or convincing it is. It's not the same. So, let's hope so. I think the general public, though, has a lot of say in this in terms of, if you don't think this is a good thing, it's okay to say no. It doesn't mean that you're a dinosaur. It doesn't mean that your beliefs are obsolete or whatever. There's nothing wrong with saying, that I think there's a time and a place for certain aspects. I think the internet is great if you are very careful about when you're using it. It doesn't take over your life. It's not like affecting your relationships or your phone, say, or social media. So I think just being very mindful of it. But this, in the realm of sexuality, and especially in the context of potentially replacing people and replacing partners and replacing interactions, that's where I start seeing it becoming pathological.
What a fascinating conversation, Dr. Debra. So, Sextinction is the book. I hope we can talk more because I think you're on the verge of some really, really, really important existential type of conversations here that we are putting off under the embarrassment of inappropriate conversation, when it's actually the most appropriate conversation if we want to continue to exist as a species, but or at least in the form that we are today. Dr. Debra, so awesome to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Anytime.
She goes, you guys have, you guys, Tenfold Pat, 2-a-day Stan, and you guys in the militia, you have sniffed out, the real motivations. I always love it when somebody squints their eyes and peers into my soul. And this is what's happening right now. As Brule story says
they're hilarious.
sounds like Will and team need an after-hour show.
I'm cracking up reading the chat.
Knowles 919 says Will sounds like he's quote asking for a friend.
You're like, so tell me more. This is horrible. Where do you get them? Where specifically?
Wait, tell me, how
what
good
number,
are they?
You know,
what does it cost?
What's the website? I just hate this
movement,
idea,
huh?
but like
it moves. Interesting.
Diane Cogan 9066 says this is the craziest thing I've ever heard of, but it's not. I know it is, Diane, but I promise you, it's not. I feel a little bit like, you know, I'm the guy who ventured beyond the wall, and I'm back to yell at everybody that the White Walkers are coming, and nobody believes me.
Yeah.
And I finally met somebody in Dr. Debra So, who's also seen the White Walkers. And everybody else is like, you're crazy. You like the White Walkers. You're into the White Walker thing. It gives you meaning. And I'm like, they're coming. Winter is coming.
People in the chat are like, this is crazy. This will never happen. And you're out here screaming like it's already happening. It's going on. Someone goes,
already happening.
Do you call people robophobe if they don't like it?
You're a robophobe. You know, let me introduce you to my girlfriend.
It's clinker.
Robophobe's pretty good, though.
We already have terms.
That's the real
Clinker
slur.
lover.
Yeah, that's the real slur.
Yeah.
No, but so you know how this is going to go. Hey, my date's going to meet us tonight. Cool, let me meet your date. Oh, she walks in, you're like, oh my God, you're dating a clinker. What are you, a robophobe? You know, we are like.
Do you think how do you think the left will handle
boys
this?
And girls.
How do you think like the LGBTQ plus crowd will handle this?
What's the plus?
All over it with open arms.
They'll defend robots?
Yeah.
Wow.
They're going to add grade to the
Without a
flag
doubt.
soon.
Interesting.
Gray. That's right. I'm telling you, friends, there are cold winds blowing from the north. Winter is coming. I promise you. Winter is coming. Alex Brucewitz is CEO of X Strategies. He's the 2024 Trump campaign advisor and the author of Winning the Social Media War, How Conservatives Can Fight Back, Reclaim the Narrative, and Turn the Tides Against the Left. And Alex is on the phone with us now here on Will Kane Country, recently back from the Middle East, recently back from the Gulf states. It's quite a pivot, Alex, to go from sex robots to war in Iran, but you're the right guy. We're glad you're here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. And if anybody who can make that transition, it's you, Will.
It's the only transition I'm making, Alex. That's the only transition I'm making. You
that's
can't
not
be
what the
dropping words
people
like
say.
transition in a sex conversation.
Look, man.
That is not.
I've heard some things.
I know, especially this week about me. I'm sure you've heard things this week about me in particular that I'm sure is at least my transition into CNN. That's what I'm accused of this week, that I'm transitioning into CNN, but I'm not. And on that note, Alex, I think you're actually the perfect guy. You're the perfect guy to have this conversation with. Before we talk about your personal experience this week, what I'm talking about is, I think that nobody has earned trust like President Donald Trump, and for that matter, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. But I do think there's legitimate concerns out there, and we are seeing them mostly voiced among young people on the right about be careful. We're not getting into another Middle Eastern quagmire, another forever war. And I'm just curious, because you've been so plugged in so many different ways to young people who gravitated toward MAGA. And by the way, podcasters, you've worked with a lot of these guys who are some of the ones raising the biggest concerns about what you think about this war with Iran and how it plays with young MAGA.
Right. I see those concerns, I hear those concerns, and I sympathize with those concerns. I mean, for my entire life, Washington, D.C. has dragged us into prolonged conflict after prolonged conflict, except for one person. His name is Donald J. Trump. And I think Donald Trump has earned my trust like he has earned your trust with how he handles foreign policy. I believe he is the greatest foreign policy president of my lifetime. And every time he does something that is deemed a little bit controversial, the panicans freak out, and then Trump ends up being proven right in the end. And so it's been a 5-day process. It's very sad that we lost 4 great servicemen, so far. Hopefully we're not going to lose any others. But it's been a 5-day process. So I think there's a lot of people who are coming from it from a genuine standpoint where they don't want to see prolonged conflict, which I understand. But then I also think there's a lot of people who are just kind of fanning the flames for the views and the clicks. And so President Trump has no intention on getting us into a forever war. He just wants to eliminate one of the greatest threats that that faces our country, that faces the world. He's doing that every day with no boots on the ground. I'm not worried about a forever war, and I encourage your audience to be very cautious of who they take their information from online, because there's some good actors and then there's a lot of bad actors who are just saying things for attention.
I totally agree. That last point is one that I think is worthy of me being emphasized. Like, there are some people who do what we do whose major North Star is relevance, and relevance is usually measured in clicks, views, ratings, whatever it may be. But that's, and you acknowledged this, Alex, that's not to say there aren't people also with real, true, ideological, good faith concerns. And there are those as well. And those come from really two places in my estimation. One is, let's not get involved in a forever war. And the other is, how does this serve America first? That's really the banner that has united the right, I feel like. I think there were some people that faked it, by the way, Alex. I think there are some people, honestly, I think there's a lot of neocons who faked it to get along with the Trump thing for a while, and I am concerned about their glee in this moment. But I think I can speak for some segment of people when I say, take Maduro out, hell yeah, I see the case for America first. Invade Greenland, hell yeah, I can see the case for America first. And you can keep going, because it's not an isolationist position. It's not a pacifist position. It's just simply a priorities position. And I do think there are some people that have asked questions like, how is this one satisfying the test of America first?
Yeah. No, I see that, and a lot of people have asked me that as well. Look, I think that Iran is one of the greatest threats that the world faces. Iran has tried to assassinate President Donald J. Trump now a few different times, and that's been proven. So we have a country, a very hostile regime, who is trying to take out the leader of our country. That's not a great situation. And so if we eliminate that threat, okay, that's great for our country. So I think that's one way it's serving America first. But look what's happening. The entire world is rallying around our country right now. We're really resetting global dynamics. Look at the Gulf nations. You have all of the Gulf nations who are rising up to the occasion to protect American citizens who are still there at the moment. They are fighting back. They are defending our bases. They're uniting. And so we are building stronger global alliances through this, which will ultimately benefit our country in the long run as well. And so I think again, it's been 5 days. How it will benefit America first, I think it will play out as the smoke clears. But we are really the president isn't looking to do a forever war. He's looking to get change in Iran, make it potentially a partner that we can do business with one day. It's a great country. It's a rich country. There's a lot of opportunities in that country, but it's been held back because of this crazy regime that has been suppressing their people and really just being just a terrible sore eye in that part of the world. And so if we can get an Iran that is working, that would be incredibly great for our country, I believe. And that's look what's happening in Venezuela. We went from having a country in Venezuela that you couldn't do any business with, that Americans couldn't be safe going to, and now we might potentially have a great trading partner for many years to come if it works out the way the president anticipates it will. So I'm optimistic that in the long term we will see how it benefits us greatly, but I'm going to trust the president and his team that they have a plan, that they're going to execute their plan like they have done in every foreign policy quest that the president has gone on since, really 2017. So I trust our guys.
Yeah. I honestly think, without being a cheerleader or being in the tank, the analysis is complicated and then it gets simple. And I totally agree. I think this president has earned that trust that would not be granted, by the way, to a lot of other people that might be doing the very same thing. But with this president, this is different, and I think that he's earned that benefit of the doubt. Let's talk about your personal experience, Alex. So you were there. You were in, I believe, Qatar, and you were there with quite a few other people. Well, first of all, tell us your experience while you were there.
Yeah. Well, I was actually there by myself, and I was passing through, and like many other people, I couldn't get out. My flights were canceled. Layovers were canceled, and so I was passing through. And fortunately, I have friends in the region who were able to help me out. But it was a surreal experience. I had missiles flying over my head. I was getting woken up at 6 a.m., 5 a.m. to alerts saying shelter in place. And then I'd look out the window and I'd see, the incredible Patriot missile defense system shooting down incoming missiles right over the sky where I'm looking up. So it was really a surreal experience, and I was fortunate enough to be able to get in contact with a friend of mine who had a private plane and get out. There's been a lot of misinformation that the President of the United States sent me that personal plane. That is not true. I organized the plane on my own. I paid for the plane on my own. And I contacted our embassy. I said, what Americans do you have? Who can I fly out? And I was, trying to be of assistance. And so I ended up being able to rescue 7 Americans on my flight out. I landed in Greece. And today I'm still helping organize transportation out of that country. And so I was able to get this young girl who was traveling to India. She's an American girl from Maryland. She was traveling to India to go to a cousin's wedding. And her layover was in Doha, and she got stuck here. And so I saw a report on CBS yesterday that she got stuck. So I reached out on social media. I said, hey, I can get you out. I got her out. So I'm trying to be a big help to people who are in the region. And so if any of your followers or listeners are hearing this, my DMs are open. And if you're in Doha in particular, I think I can help you get out. So I'm trying to help. Incredible. I know the State Department is doing an incredible job. They've repatriated 20,000 Americans since February 28th. And so there's a great public and private effort that's underway. And, I was fortunate enough to get out. The Democrats are very unhappy that I got out, to be honest. They keep saying I should have been left there.
Well, I read an article about this, Alex, so I do know you helped some Democrats too. There were some Democrats in your crowd.
I did. Believe it or not, I did.
Or at least former Democrats who worked for Bill Clinton.
Right. I wasn't asking people who wanted to get on my plane, are you a Republican or a Democrat? I wasn't doing that litmus test, believe it or not. I said, do you have a United States passport? Are you an American citizen? And they said, yes. And I said, okay, you're coming with me. So I didn't know necessarily at the time when I was leaving how many Americans were there. But there actually seems to be a substantial amount. And so I know that the State Department is really focused on getting people out. And I'm doing everything in my power as an individual to use my resources and my connections in the region to get as many Americans to safe places as possible. So the Democrats, meanwhile, they're bitching about me, but they refuse to do anything to help. My face ended up on Adam Schiff's timeline yesterday, which was unfortunate. And but he was lying. He said that the Trump administration sent me a plane, but left thousands and thousands of Americans behind. That couldn't be further from the truth. But all these people do is lie, and then they do nothing to help. But we're used to it, and the Trump administration is focused on it. I'm focused on it, and many of my friends in the region are focused on helping get Americans out.
One more curiosity, Alex, you said you saw that over the skies of Doha. You saw the Patriot interceptors. You saw the missiles. Did you see drones? We know about the stories of Iranian drones making their way to Dubai, hitting a hotel, and so forth. What was it like in Doha?
I didn't see drones. I was fortunate actually to get out before I think the drones started going into there. But I mean, I'm hearing really insane stories from people in that region, what they're witnessing, and it's awful. And also in Israel, it's really a crazy situation that's happening. These Iranians are nuts. But fortunately, I don't think that they'll be able to keep up an offensive like this much longer. I think that they have a lot of outdated technology and weaponry. The Gulf nations, most of them buy great equipment from our country and our defense systems. But it's very sad. And, these are great people in these different nations who have really never experienced something like this. Like Qatar, for example, they're not used to having missiles and drones coming into their territory. They're relatively peaceful people, and same with Abu Dhabi and Dubai. These guys are very focused on making money and making friends, and they're not really accustomed to having this type of situation. Israel's substantially more accustomed to it because these crazy people have been targeting Israel for thousands and thousands of years. But it's really an unfortunate situation. I hope it comes to an end soon. But we need to finish it up. We need to finish the job. We need to get and I trust President Trump. He will get it done.
All right. Alex Bruce, we're glad you're safe. Glad for the work that you're doing to help other people as well get out of the region, and glad for the voice you gave to the first two questions I asked you today about how young people might be looking at what's going on in Iran. He's the CEO of X Strategies and a former Trump campaign advisor. Alex, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. I won't spread rumors about your transition anymore.
I'll survive. I think I'll survive regardless of the circumstances. But thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. I'm going to stay. I'm staying the way I always have been. I'm not transitioning to anything. There he goes. Alex Brusewitz here on Will Kane Country. Speaking of that, let's go back because these comments are pretty fun,
Dude,
Dan, to your point.
Cracking up.
This is Kathy Warren. Kathy Warren E7U. By the way, if you think about people's handles on YouTube also, Kathy Warren E7U. I'm not accusing you of anything, Kathy, but how long until you have a relationship with something with a similar handle, right? The handle itself is post-human.
This is great.
Will,
T2I.
This subject is off the rails. Let me introduce you to Angie, model 3346. She's customizable in these various forms.
Makes me miss Pete
you're
and
not
off the
far,
rails.
man. It used to be the segment with the Secretary of the War, Will and Pete, off the rails. Eric David says, even though I got out of a bad relationship of 11 years, I still will not date an AI. You say that today, Eric. Michael Royal says, I couldn't even internet date, more or less date the internet.
That dude's been cracking me up this entire time.
Freedom Q9L says, this is just disturbing. And Vic G2260 says, does emotion come into play? Can a bot have emotions, and how can we decipher if there's an emotion versus brain memory? That's actually so fascinating. And honestly, Vic, these are the kind of questions that I really think that we ought to be thinking about. It's fun. All this stuff is fun. It really is. It's like funny. But we already know the answer to this, at least in part, right? We know the answer that human beings can create an emotional connection to something that is not human. It's happening. That's not a projection. That is real. People are falling in love with their AI. Now, the reverse is not happening. The robot ain't going to love you back. The AI ain't going to love you back. It doesn't have a soul. No, well, maybe just like a stripper, because you can convince yourself that the stripper loves you, that you're different.
I swear she loves me. I'm different than the other guys.
And I'm sure people will convince themselves of their AI, but their AI robot.
This one's sentient.
But ultimately, yeah.
I'd be worried.
It's not going to love you back. Go ahead,
a lot of this tech isn't actually, the tech working. It's like some guy in India or a different African country, sitting there watching you.
You could hack it. People could hack your stuff. I
can't remember. There was literally something that came out the other day where it was there's video cameras, and they're actually Africans who sit there and watch.
Talk about blackmail.
all the stuff. I can't remember what it was. If it was an AI.
They could see you through the camera.
Well,
they go through all the content and they know exactly what's going on.
There's a movie like this that came out recently.
Well, don't you presume that nothing you do on the internet is private? Like, whatever you're saying to your AI, whatever you're watching, it's not ultimately private.
I assume
the only thing saving you is that. Yeah, but the only thing saving you is the idea that nobody really cares what you're thinking or looking or watching at.
Right.
That's
unless
the
you're a
only thing
celebrity
saving
or
you.
rich person or, something like that. I would worry.
Do you think there has been a politician, a person with power, who has been blackmailed by what they have watched on the internet? Do you think that there has been, and who would do the blackmailing? Like, are we talking about like Mark Zuckerberg and his minions have the ability to ultimately say to a high-level politician, Senator, we need you to vote this way because otherwise we know exactly what you've been looking at on the internet?
I'm glad you said that because that's exactly what it was. It's Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook Ray-Ban glasses, and they have that camera on there.
Oh, yeah.
And they have all these people going through it and tagging everything. So it's not AI actually doing it. It's like them tagging it so that the AI in the future can do it. And they're seeing everything. They can see people having sex. They can see people doing all kinds of crazy things.
I would take my glasses off, but that's just my opinion.
Apparently not. Apparently people don't.
Well, on that note, Patrick, it's not even what you're looking at on the internet. Like, obviously what I'm alluding to here is they could, well, it's not just that. They could see what
sexual acts,
porn you've looked at, but they could see, but not just that. They could be looking at like, oh, you've been on this Reddit feed. We know what you're consuming or what a writer or commentator you gravitate towards.
Yeah, sure.
All of that stuff. But there's another level. We know that the phone listens to you. It's listening right now. We know that the NSA can do that. We know that Instagram does it. If anybody ever doubts that, if you haven't, you know Instagram listens to you. So if it can do that, then theoretically these politicians or anybody of some level of manipulation could be blackmailed with what they're talking about with somebody. Even your wife. We know you were talking to your wife about this very sensitive conversation. We think maybe you should vote a certain way.
Yeah, I don't think so. I use incognito mode, so I don't think
that doesn't even work. Everything can be seen. Everything can be seen. I go like VPN, everything. People can figure that stuff out so easily.
No doubt. Well, on one hand, I think that's 100% true, Dan, because
but do they care?
They're telling us that's true.
Yeah.
Like if you've ever talked to somebody from NSA or big tech who works in big tech, they'll tell you that they can. There's no getting around it. On the other hand, they don't know who killed Nancy Guthrie. So every time I think they've got all this figured out, they don't have the killer of Nancy Guthrie or kidnapper of Nancy Guthrie.
But data is gold now. It's literally the biggest currency of our world.
What?
People's data. They
It's
sell.
kind of like the fences where the fences are pointed in. It's like who are you keeping people out or keep people in? And it's like why do they have so much on us and not on like murderers?
Well, I think they do on all of us. I mean, the Patriot Act started as getting terrorists, right? But then Edward Snowden came along and was like, hey, they're looking at you too. So just so you're aware.
I mean, but to Patrick's point, then why can't you catch the killer of Nancy Guthrie? And I think that the answer to this is it's not quite as sophisticated as we all want to believe it might be right now.
Sure.
There's a lot of noise.
It's not like
when you have so much stuff.
Like theoretically,
so much stuff
but we have profiles on each of us.
Let's say that
some company has.
Let's say the dude that took Nancy Guthrie didn't take his phone with him, right? So there's no geolocating him. There's no listening to what happened that night.
No Apple Watch.
But has he then never? Yeah, but okay. But then has he never picked up a phone? Has he never talked about it in the vicinity of someone's phone? Has he never done anything that would give it away? If we presume that they're capable of technologically surveilling everything, then how does it not show up in any way after the fact? And the answer may be they're not devoting the resources to that, right? They're not devoting the resources to or that they don't have that full capability.
But what if that person wasn't on some radar beforehand? Like they're not going to be in some database or being looked at. So I mean, you could find other criminals based on previous criminal history. So I don't know.
Yeah, but you're in there. You're in the database though. You didn't do anything.
True. But like for a specific crime, of like kidnapping and murdering someone.
Yeah.
But I'm sure companies have profiles in each one of us. Our likes, what we buy, what we watch, what we listen to.
No doubt.
Who we talk to.
No doubt.
It's insane.
No doubt. So this is all a long way around the block to say they're going to know about your relationship with your sex robot.
Yeah.
They're going to know everything about
Every
it.
word.
It won't be private. Every act.
Every act. People won't care.
It's coming. It's coming. Winter is coming. There are cold winds from the north. Okay? I'm here to tell you. I've seen the White Walkers. This is coming, and coming fast. That's going to do it for us today here on Will Kane Country. We hope you will follow us on Spotify or Apple. Drop a comment, leave a like, and everything else that we appreciate. We'll see you next time.